If you were convicted of murder, your family and loved ones were in danger too.
Family and friends of convicted murderers also had reason to be nervous. Anyone who attempted to help a convicted murderer out of prison or tried to rescue them on the way to the execution was guilty of a felony. The punishment was death. Convicted murderers were also denied the customary visit of clergy, meaning they couldn't atone and ask for forgiveness. Additionally, if you tried to salvage the murderer's remains after the execution in an attempt to save their soul, you could get in serious trouble. If you were caught in the act, you were to be transported in a prison ship to some of His Majesty's colonies or plantations in America for the term of 7 years. In 1837, however, the act was amended to abolish the death penalty for would-be rescuers. Instead of capital punishment, they were sentenced to transportation for life by the Punishment of Offences Act. There were further revisions over the next 2 centuries, but the act was not abolished until July of 1973. The first man executed after the Murder Act received a brutal posthumous sentence. Thomas Wilford was hanged at Tyburn in 1752. He only had one arm, but that didn't grant him any mercy from the court. The 17-year-old married a young prostitute, Sarah Williams, but the honeymoon lasted only 4 days. He thought his wife was unfaithful to him, so he grabbed a knife and slashed her so thoroughly he nearly decapitated her. According to the Ordinary of Newgate's account, his verdict read as follows: Thomas Wilford, you stand convicted of the horrid and unnatural crime of murdering Sarah, your wife. This court doth adjudge that you be taken back to the place from whence you came, and there to be fed on bread and water till Wednesday next, when you are to be taken to the common place of execution, and there hanged by the neck until you are dead, after which your body is to be publicly dissected and anatomized, agreeable to an act of Parliament in that case made and provided, and may God Almighty have mercy on your soul. The Murder Act was meant to deter criminals, but it also advanced science. The Murder Act was meant to deter criminals, but it also advanced science. The bodies of the poor and criminals were used to better understand human anatomy. The bodies of the poor and criminals were used to better understand human anatomy. British Christians in the 18th century were obsessed with being buried on holy ground. Hanging wasn't enough, so most judges added gibbeting to sentences. Thomas Wilford was the first person executed under the Murder Act in the summer of 1752. Hangings were elaborate public spectacles. Hundreds, if not thousands, of morbidly curious onlookers showed up at executions. Once the hanging was done, a judge could impose further punishment. This was gibbeting, wherein the body was placed in a cage and hung from a gallows-type structure called a gibbet. It was meant to be a stern warning to would-be wrongdoers. The Murder Act of 1751 put this practice into regular use. The gibbets with the bodies of the executed criminal were usually placed at the crossroads of public highways for all to see and smell. Eventually, their remains were scattered anonymously into public fields. The bodies of the hanged were dissected, often in public. The Murder Act stipulated that the dead person's body should not be buried. In some instances, the corpse was hung in public places. This was meant to shame the family of the victim, while reminding the populace what was in store for them if they committed murder. The other post-execution degradation was dissection by the town's surgeons. These dissections could sometimes be public affairs, adding to the disgrace for family and friends. The purpose here was twofold. On one hand, the public display deprived the individual of their dignity. On the other, the violation of a corpse was an act of desecration to God-fearing Christians. And again, both punishments were thought to be an effective deterrent to vicious crimes. The latter punishment served an eminently practical purpose as well.
The act made sure you wouldn't get a proper last meal.
Once you were convicted, there was no recourse for an appeal. The law stated that a person found guilty of murder should be executed 2 days after being sentenced, unless the third day was a Sunday for religious reasons. This gave one plenty of time to think about a last meal. In some countries, the condemned could order whatever they wanted, and in copious amounts, the hangman's meal. Wine and beer were thankfully typically included. Unfortunately, according to the Murder Act, the convicted could only be fed just bread and water once the sentence was passed. The only exclusions were in case of receiving the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, and except in case of any violent sickness or wound.
The goal of the act was to add more infamy to murderers' punishment.
The goal of the act was to add more infamy to murderers' punishment.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.